Did you know teachers aren't humans? They're not allowed to show stress or age, have health problems, show fear, waste time, and most of all, fail. They're not even allowed to go to the bathroom. That's okay, because we're here to talk about how we're all just playing a role. And at 3 o'clock, we get to be us again. 40 years ago, two 8-year-old boys were bored out of their minds in school, and they vowed one day they would do something about it. They did it to honor their friends. They did it to honor their classmates. They did it for the love of learning. I'm Matt, and this is Rob, and 40 years later, we get our turn, but now we're playing teacher.
All right. Recording in progress.
All right. Welcome to Playing Teacher. I am Matt, and
I'm Rob.
right. So I'm never sure if you're going to fill in and Rob here,
Yeah, yeah.
or
You could just throw it out
or
there. You could just
I
say,
did, and then I didn't want to say it at the same time.
yeah, yeah.
You
No,
know,
no, I mean, you could say, yeah, yeah. Okay. I see. I see.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I did that at the beginning, and then you started. I think I paused once, and then you
Yeah.
started coming in, and then you started, and then you said it like, and I'm Rob here, and then, which sounded kind of cool. So I was like, I didn't know if you're still doing that.
Bobby.
That's Rob here.
Uh,
So we have an interesting topic today. Start us off. Um, Oops, I did it again.
yeah.
What makes a teacher unpopular with colleagues?
Mm-hmm. Something we both
Mm.
know a lot about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a million directions we can go with this. I I I feel the longer you stay in one place, there's definitely a chance you're gonna piss off somebody,
Mm-hmm.
for something. So many different people in one building, adults in one building, in a stressed out situation. You're gonna annoy somebody. But I was pretty good at it, I
Yeah.
have to say. I think you're right up there with me as people, like that we annoyed, in one way or another, probably for a lot of different reasons. Um, um,
One reason I think is like people there's a certain type of person that likes things to go a certain way. Like they think things are supposed to happen a certain way, and like any deviation from that is like
yeah,
upsetting a balance or something.
yeah.
Both
And
teachers
listen,
and administrators.
I don't blame them. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna be I gotta be me.
Yeah.
That's like I got to do it my way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
As Sinatra said. So that's the way I see education. The way you see education is another way.
So my question is, and you were at the place longer than I was. So do you feel like the people who were also there for a long time get more annoyed, or the newer people who come in and are exposed to you get more annoyed? Like who's
Um,
affected?
it's like a dysfunctional, a long dysfunctional family when you've been people with so long. Like,
Yeah,
you almost know everyone's style. There are people, here's the thing. There are people that, like you said, they like things a certain way, and they will not change their teaching style for like 20 plus years. You know what I
right.
mean? Like that's what brought them to the dance. That's what works. They have a
Mm-hmm.
mortgage, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to teach this way. And if you walked in basically on day one and day 25, you wouldn't see one difference in
Right.
in the way, even if the curriculum changed. Um, uh, I I was somebody who, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but I would like sort of take chances in my approach to education,
Right.
and try things out, a year, or, the way, or, and change up my style. I would say the last few years, like my style was very similar. I
Mm-hmm.
just sort of got into a groove. This is what's working for me. So I sort of got to that point also, but in my own way. But my own way was completely out of the box of the
Yeah.
whole. DOE system. It was
You
just
know,
what worked for me. It was almost like an alternative style.
yeah. Do you ever hear like comparing accuracy versus precision? So like imagine you're shooting bow and arrow at a target, right?
You think I know what that means? No,
Yes,
yeah,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
no. This is the perfect analogy, right?
All right,
So
explain
imagine
it
you're
to me
shooting
since we're
you're
teachers. Go ahead.
shooting a bow and arrow or a gun at a target, right? You know, a target with all the circles, you know? And
I
so
Thanks for explaining that.
yes, yes. And so like you could say that like, you know, on one hand, if you were to hit or darts, if you were to hit the center circle all the time,
Mhm.
I don't even remember. That's either precision or accurate. Let's say that that's accuracy. You're hitting it accurately, right?
Right,
But like if you were to hit somewhere on like the upper left, which is not in some people's minds not the ideal place, but
you can get more points.
you
Yeah,
hit there
yeah,
every time though.
yeah.
You're being precise. Like you're
Okay,
doing something that's also difficult. You know what I mean? Like it's not the exact place where people think it's supposed to go. And I feel like
right.
that's kind of like, it's almost like an outlier. It's like,
Well,
it's not, yeah.
I think why I people got pissed off at me is I think like the position I had, people thought it was easier. You know what I mean? And then until you walk in, you know, um, my shoes, or somebody else's shoes who's doing a cluster position. It's not necessarily easier. It's just a different position. There's still like an enormous amount that goes into making it work.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think it develops. I think certain people's positions. That's another reason why teachers get annoyed with other colleagues is, like I remember this one when I pitched an idea for a class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the class didn't exist, but the administrator at the time said, "Okay, try it for a year." So I ordered all this crazy shit like blocks and like an enormous amount of toys and things, and and that the school gave me money for. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
I just and I said this is part of the class, which is titled Imagination Station.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, the class was called Imagination Art in the Imagination Station,
Great
right?
class, by the way.
So, thank you. So, people are going to take a look at this and pass by. And I remember the number one comment I got was, "Why does he get to do this?"
Yeah.
Now, and that's a big part of, because I wouldn't go around and be like, "Look what I get to do," ha ha ha. No, I just did it, and
Yeah.
and I didn't get it for any other reason than I pitched it,
Yes.
and they said okay, and they also saw my style. At that point, they had no reason to give me this unless I gave a good enough pitch
Yeah.
to do this. And they weren't just playing. I had a whole design for the class.
Yeah. No, I remember.
That
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that connected to developing their imagination,
Mm-hmm.
and so but it pissed a lot of people off. And the other thing that I think, for me personally, then we can get into other people, noise. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
yeah. Oh my God.
because later, if I'm a music teacher and they put me in a room that is right next door to anybody that's reading or underneath me, and then they're like, the school will buy me like drums, and
Yeah.
then I'm like, you play a drum, even light, the rhythm carries underneath, the rhythm carries across the room. As a science teacher, you understand how sound travels, right? So it was awful. I would just get calls left and right. At a certain point, I stopped using them. I bought with my own money. I just bought drum pads and headphones that they would use. I realized because then, because that was the only way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why can't we use those great? I have these great big conga drums and all over them. Why don't we use these? And I would tell them the truth. They're like, well, the teacher underneath is going to call, or she doesn't like that,
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
door. And I would just say, I was like, maybe you can convince them to why do we have to do it here? I was like, I have no idea why they put me here. Like I should be in the
Yeah.
corner in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
auditorium, but they can't. And nobody was ever able to figure that out.
Yeah.
But noise. It was being set up with all these things to fail because you can't really do your job accurately. Like, and then of course the big thing was recorders. Why don't you use recorders? They don't seem to realize the recorder sound is going to be the most annoying sound to
Mm-hmm.
everybody in the school trying to work. So you think if I would have gone, and I was like totally against the recorder sound. I just hated it, like it bothered my sensory and everything. But like people didn't realize if they think that the drums were going to be annoying, if you
Right.
had 30 people playing recorders at the
Hmm.
same exact time, forget about it. So
So,
anyway,
so like
that's my
the
little vent
noise
of how I annoyed people.
the noise that
So
we're making with the kids in the classroom being loud, that was like we were notorious for that. Kids were having fun, they were learning. But let's talk about something different though. Let's talk about like when you or I were on prep, right? And
mm,
then like you walk in the
oh,
halls and it's very, very quiet. You know what I mean? Like you're looking into the classrooms and kids are all sitting there like perfectly quiet and
mhm.
it's like not every single class, but most classes, right? Like something that I would do is I'd walk by and if the kids looked bored, I would just like open the door about a foot and yell into the classroom like hello and then close the door and walk away and then like for the next minute or two you hear the kids laughing and the teacher trying to get them back on task like oh stop it everyone quiet I said quiet like
That's called you just wanted to get a rise out of the teacher, and like more than anything
but
else.
also but also like give a little joy to the kids, you know what I
No,
mean?
I know, I know. Yeah. Well, like I would do the same thing later, even before I left. And it was just, there's nothing like a child's laughter, like the natural laughter, not the forced laughter when they're
Yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah,
cracking up. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So I would be in my room. There was so many windows, right? And this is partially this was for them. Partially might be to bug a teacher,
yeah.
but also, but a little dig almost. But partially also, I just find it hysterical if you can hear the teacher like, like this lay two straight
Yeah.
lines. What are you doing, Frankie? Why are you not looking at it? And like, I'm like, oh, you going on Frankie again? And you're watching this and you're
Yeah.
listening to this and you're like, hmm. And like, so I would take like, Spider Monkey or Herbie and just like, I'd be like over here. And then, if you're watching on YouTube or something like that, you know what I'm doing. But if you don't, I'm sticking a stuffed chicken like right by the window. And then, so all of a sudden it'd be like this. The kids are passing by and Herbie would just like peek up like this. You know, and the
Yeah.
kids are then screaming, and then I'd be getting them in trouble, right?
Herbie.
And they're like, and then but the teacher's yelling at them,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
They don't know what's going on,
And then they realize it's
and
you.
then Herbie's like running across, then because then he's in trouble, and then I'm yelling at Herbie, and then
Or like so that's great. Like we should name these things. Like one is where a teacher's trying to walk class past really quietly and you purposely do something in the room to distract them. The other one though is like where they're in the room and not opening the door, but like we would do things in the hallway. Like we'd run up and down the hallway and like remember like we would use like that big long pole and try to do like pole vaulting and we would do all the
I
or
th
we'd run and
I think that
slide. And then the kids are just they
that
know
that
they
that that was you. I don't think I did that one.
yeah, oh, that's me and Neil and I maybe.
I think that was you and Neil.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But either way, I'm saying like
yeah,
doing stuff in the hallway
more or less. Yeah,
that basically like turns the heads of the people in the classroom, you know.
it was fun.
What about let's take it in a different direction though. Like so then there was
Okay.
things that we did in the room that wound up affecting like the whole school. You know, and I'm thinking about the lab and the sink,
Mhm.
like the issue that we had
Oh,
with the
like the
sink.
fly problem?
Yeah.
Did we leave food in the fridge or something that's like, something was in the drain, I think, right? We
It
developed like
was
a fruit
something.
fly.
It wasn't
Uh-uh.
something. There was something with the drain where
Yeah, it was pretty
food couldn't go down there because I don't know if you remember the drain on the sink didn't come out and there was little tiny holes. But
Was this when Neil was there? Or
yeah, actually, I
it
don't
might have
know
been you and
actually.
Neil. I don't know, but I was using the lab all the time too. I was
We
just
were in
hanging
there.
out
It
there
could have been
eating.
like us
Yeah,
putting protein
I
shakes
don't.
down there and
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I know. We just screwed up. Like whatever it was, we had fruit flies all over the school, and we got the blame.
Yeah. But then, it wasn't, oh, but, another thing could have been though, was like we had all the animals too. So like, I don't know, like if one of the lizards died, we'd put the body of the lizard into the tank with the mealworms and it would like,
Mm.
it would eat basically eat it. But for whatever reason, there were flies but you know what? Here's the thing. We have a defense they were like in rooms across the hall and down the hall and in other people. They were going all around the place, but we didn't really have a problem in the room. You know, we were
No, it's
definitely
like
blamed for it though.
they left us and then they went there. So they didn't have, but we also had Neil, who Neil was great at catching fruit flies. I think he had like I don't know, bowls out with
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
orange
yeah.
peels in it, and he
He
came
was
up
like
with these
using
different.
science.
Yeah, no, he was, and no, so it was fantastic. It's
Yeah,
like he would explain they could get in, but they can't get out, and he had all these techniques. So I think we just solved the problem in our room, but
yeah,
everybody else was fucked. So but we were like the room that caused it, and then we were sitting back like, isn't it great not having flies around? And
yeah,
everybody else was like, I'm gonna kill you, Jacobs and Monahan.
yeah. Oh man, what else do we got? What else makes a person unpopular? I mean,
Well, I mean, for me, if you're pushing in, right?
oh yeah, of course.
Lateness, irritates the hell out of people. I love, I'm like the opposite. When a class comes late, like that's the greatest thing in the world, because it's like 5 extra minutes. But we're talking about like if you miss a couple of minutes of your prep, right? So,
Yes.
um, you know, there's some people that are like, sorry, I got stuck in the elevator, blah, 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 blah. And then there's other people that are just like this outside their room, not even saying anything. And then there's some people like, or that actually and everybody knows this because this would happen to everybody like that had to cover the tea. Like
Hmm.
there's one teacher that would walk away before you get there,
Yeah,
leaving the kids, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
like let's say I'm walking into the auditorium, right? And I'm coming from the back. You know what I mean? And I got all
yeah,
my
yeah,
stuff. I
yeah.
got a
And they're
bag, I
out.
got a cart, and I'm gonna give the kids a good time. I'm gonna show them all these different fun things, and you're just coming in, like it's like the clown car coming down, right?
Yeah,
And then like so, I'm coming down, coming, and you're tired, you're sweating. I'm coming, like, and then like they just see me popping through the door,
yeah.
but I didn't even turn the corner yet, right?
No, no,
And
yeah,
then the teacher's like this, zoom
yeah.
out the
You're like
door, like
100 yards out, and the teacher's like, "They're
yes.
all yours."
So assuming the 90 seconds that it's going to take for me to get
Yeah,
down
yeah,
there,
yeah.
your kids are perfectly fine, which is basically them by themselves. Because I'm not looking at them right now,
Hmm.
and like what I mean. I'm like trying to just bring my crap down there, and I'm like, yeah. So it's not even a high or anything like that. That's quite common, And what are you going to do? It's a large building, You have to get from, you have 2 minutes to get anywhere.
If
And
that.
if you're and if you're that's what it was where I was
Yeah.
for a long time. 2 minutes. If you're in a corner and then you have to get all the way to the other side of the building
Or
and
another
you're bringing
building.
well that was yeah yours earlier was no,
Yeah.
but then there was like 5 minutes when you had to travel to the other building.
Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
there were some periods where it was 5 and some where it was 0. Like it would like the period would start and end at the same time. Like,
Well, my biggest issue was, and I hated when this happened, right? I hated because I never wanted to to bust anybody, but like if a teacher didn't come back, um, like on time for me to then get to somewhere else. There's no way automatically then I'm gonna look bad
yeah.
to the
Yep.
person and you can't do anything about it. Like as far as they could have been in a meeting, they could have been this, but there's a certain level of stress but I never got angry at anybody for it. I just knew like someone's gonna get angry at me right away. It's a different type of thing. It's just one of the stresses of the job when you're like, all right, what are you gonna do? I wouldn't say anything. I would just show up, be like, what are you gonna do? Like, how many times? And if it's a regular thing, like after a while, I'm just like, all right, let that person just sulk and cry, like storm away angry. I was used to it. There was so many different ways I could piss somebody off, for just showing up. But, for all the ones that I drove crazy, there was one, especially, new ones that came in. I always got along really, really well with Paras,
Hmm.
you know. Like
Yep.
Paras, I felt like Paras, because they got to actually see me work. paras had an understanding
Yeah.
of what I did, especially the older paras who are like veterans for
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah.
Like they knew like because they saw the whole thing. They didn't like stay for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like a walk by and see it. So they got to see the development, of their kids. So they do develop a respect for you. Because they got to see what it really is that you're trying to do year
Yeah.
after year. I
That's
remember
the
there was
thing
one
too.
that.
Year after year, like they would see, they might be with the same kid for three,
Mhm.
4 years. You know?
Yeah. Like there was one that left and she went through like a horrible tragedy, it's like, and I won't even, well, like,
Yeah.
she, like her son died, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I remember she left, and that was like, she had such an understanding for what I did that like she picked me up, because she got to see the results directly because she was a special education para and how I worked, with children like, there. Like, and then those things, like I might be doing something and taking something so far out that would piss off other teachers, but she got to see like what it was I was giving the kids that they could take with them, for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
And she would always say like just tell me like what you're doing for them is like 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 unmeasurable. And it meant so much to me because so many people dragging you down, you shoot it off, I mean you shake it off, but year after year after year, if you're thinking so far in the box for the benefit of the kids, it weighs you down to the point like where it just takes a toll. But then it just takes sometimes one voice like that who sees you be like, oh, you're there for a reason.
Yeah.
And of course, all this stuff doesn't matter. It's about them. You're a professional. You're an adult doing it. But it does weigh you down when you're so against, or you work so far out of a system because you feel this is the way to go. And you either compromise work their system or say, okay, I'll do whatever you want me to do, but I'm going to do it completely different, when you shut the door. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know that's what works, and that's what I did. It was like, I'm going to do it my way. Hey, we have a guest.
Hi guys.
Not even a guess.
Hey,
We have a latecomer. So
that's right.
so Brugge's joining us now, and I would say that she's late, but she's really not. It's just that you and I are you and I no longer work in the school, and she actually
Oh,
works.
no, yeah,
So
yeah, that's right. You're in a school, and right,
yeah.
I'm in a
So
basement. Yeah,
she had to
I thought
run to
you
her car.
I
I'm in
thought
a.
that you were going to say you and I no longer work. Full stop.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was gonna say we are no, you and I are unemployed. So, but that's not really true. But
That is
Well, no,
not
it's
true
not. It's
yeah.
not.
at all.
Yeah, like
But
true,
it's
but like,
funnier. It's like
yeah,
It's
it's.
funnier.
Well, actually, my line. I think I cut. I said, yeah, you work in a. I work in a basement. You know.
I work on a balcony. So, Broogie, we were just talking about the reasons for how a teacher becomes unpopular in a school, and I'm sure that you have many, many, many stories about this.
Um,
Like with other colleagues, and it doesn't have to be just a teacher. We said teacher, but I mean, it could be another colleague outside of being a teacher that might piss off other colleagues in the school as well.
well, I know like one thing that really pissed off teachers that they still talk about it to this day.
Mm.
When you guys would like they would be teaching and you guys would just like jump in and interrupt their class and
Oh my
just
God,
create
you're
like
saying that.
wreck havoc and they would be so pissed because then they would have to manage their 30 children to get them back into like their seats and you guys
Actually,
are
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes
no,
I would.
I'm glad you brought them up. Brought that up also, because that's also is what pisses them off is when they come in. Let's say they're a minute early and they're getting online and they're insane. You know what I mean? Like because what happened? Now you could take 10 seconds and if that teacher wasn't there, be like and do whatever routine you have. Like there's so many different ways. I like to do something like let the rain fall down. It's like corny, but and that's everybody does this. And then the teacher walks in exactly at the moment. 5 seconds before they're screaming like,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you just let the rain fall. You know what I mean? Like, and the teacher walks in, see ya, and they walk out. Then they're crazy again for the other teacher because you riled them up, but you know how to get them
It's
quiet.
like
But if they
Animal from
walk,
the Muppets,
yes
when he's
oh
playing
yeah,
the drums.
But if you walk in exactly at the wrong moment, they're like, they got a math test in 5 minutes, and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah, but some teachers, it's like always the wrng moment.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
There's
never a
never the
good time.
right moment
Never
to
a
do
good time
that.
for the kids to be happy.
no.
Yep. That's funny.
My favorite one though, like sometimes I would go into the class and I would do a little bit and then I'd leave. But my favorite my favorite times were just opening the door and then screaming something. And I don't want to do it in the microphone, but it would be like this, Yahoo! And then I would just close the door and leave. And then teacher, then I'm just walking away
That wouldn't bother anybody.
hearing the kids go crazy.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
so
like you said, like kids can have it's okay for kids to have fun. And like
yeah.
they're kids.
I actually remember being a kid, and then that's the best part I remember it being so boring when I was a kid that any difference, anything that happens
Yeah.
during the day, like that's a little strange, or
Yeah.
if somebody walked in the room, and just like handed a paper and the paper fell on the floor, I'd crack up, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so I was so like pent up. I remember my friend and I would just, anything that happened, like that was, out of, that would change from language arts, and we would just be bright red cracking
All of a
up
sudden you're
for
like the
like,
Joker. Like you're just
yeah,
laughing uncontrollably.
anything. Yeah, well, I'm still like that, like I
Yeah.
won't laugh for a long time, and then I'll just, I'll have this thing where I'll laugh until I cry, like if I can't, can't hold it in. But that's kind of like what it was like then.
Yeah, and those are the things that you never forget, right? Like
That was
those
almost
are
the title of this podcast. What will they remember?
yeah,
Will they
they
remember? Yeah.
yep. They don't remember, like those are the moments that I remember for sure.
Yeah.
Having those like fun little like it was so it was boring. Just sitting
I
there
look
and desk.
forward actually to the fights were amazing. The
Yeah.
fights were like adventures in my school.
Did you guys ever have food fights?
No,
No, I don't. Well,
never.
I did, but not in school. I got kicked out of I was on vacation with my family. Got kicked out of the teen table for starting it. Yeah, and then they brought me back like over to my parents and the family and say he started a food fight. My uncle,
Shame,
my
shame.
no, it was like the
Shame.
opposite. My uncle was so cool. I love my uncle. He passed away, but a few years ago. But he's like, really? And then he started throwing food at my mom, in front of them. He did that. He started that. I sat down with them and I stayed with them. Like,
We're doing
sorry.
this?
I was only involved in one food fight when I was a kid. I was in seventh grade and it was chaos. I mean, kids just went
Uh,
insane, hiding under the table. People had chicken parms stuck to their backs. I mean, it was
I mean, how
so
amazing is that?
disgusting.
Like, how
It
does
was
it?
so
But somebody has. Do you remember who started it? Because that's the stuff I remember.
I,
Remember
I
details
actually
like
do.
that.
I actually
Yeah.
do. And Brian Nolan, and he was like, food fight. And then it just fucking erupted.
You need a Brian
Do you
Nolan
still
in
do you
in your
still know
school or
him?
in your life.
No, I don't know him.
One of
Should
my
get him on
friends,
here.
one of my friends, Steve Thompson, and man, this guy, we were on a bowling team together once. He and I, we came in last place. But anyway, every time the teacher would leave the room. I don't know if you guys had this. Did you have windows where you needed a window pole to like
Yes.
right you hook it onto a hook and you pull down the window on the top because it's so high.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
teacher would
where I
walk.
worked it, yeah. But I mean, I was the guy that they were called to, as a teacher to go
No,
open
we
up other people's windows
we know we
or
had
yeah.
this in our classroom, and it was like if you were a kid and the teacher said, "Oh, can someone open the windows?" Because we didn't have air conditioning. If you got to use the window pole, you were like the coolest.
Oh, right.
Teacher would leave the room. Steve Thompson would grab the window pole and he would smash it up into the ceiling, like right where the hook was, and then
That perception issues, or he did it on purpose?
no, no, on purpose. It was like, well, that's
Oh,
the
okay.
thing. It was like
Uh,
trying to make it look like an accident. And over time, there was this hole in the ceiling. It was like the Shawshank Redemption. It was like going up to the next floor. And, then one day he gets up, he grabs the pole, he looks at the room, everyone's looking at him, and he goes, ha ha, and he smashes it again. And that second, you hear, and the teacher was standing at because they figured this out. I mean, the freaking
Oh yeah,
hole,
but they,
so he
yeah, like
got, that was the
the
last
hole
time that
keeps
ever
getting
happened.
bigger and bigger.
And that was the last time you ever saw Stephen
Yeah,
Thompson.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, that's the last time anyone ever saw Steve
Yeah,
Thompson.
he escaped through the hole.
The rumor he
That was
used to
that, that it was Shawshank. He was like planning his prison escape.
he used to
He was
take
Rumor
his
has it.
trying to get out of school.
he used to take in like seventh grade. He would take eighth grade. He would take his mom's car and drive around the neighborhood and pick up. Like I was too chicken shit to like sneak out of my house and take a joyride. But that was like you know he was like
Did you
Wait,
he was
ever?
like a
how
legend.
old is he? Wait, how
This was in
old
like
is
eighth grade, like younger than Sam is now.
Do you know when I was in
it's
sixth
so
grade?
He was a
classic.
bad kid. You know.
Me and my two of my friends and two of my friends and I, right? We planned for like 6 months because sixth grade you're graduating elementary back then. It wasn't fifth. We planned for 6 months like a great escape day. We just like said like let's just all come up with an excuse and not and then just go out plan this like awesome day out. We did it. We took off. We did Ferris Bueller's Day Off basically in sixth
Yeah.
grade. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Uh,
that's
I never
that's
forgot
pretty
that day.
brave for a sixth grader. I mean, you're
The
sixth
the
grade. You're 11 years
yeah.
old.
The greatest freedom I remember was when it was unreal when we first we met. We had a meeting spot. We all met there, right? And this was all planned out. And then we went to the subway, right? And then once the subway doors closed, I remember we looked at each other like, we did it. We were still nervous until we got on that train because we knew somebody could see us still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's still kids around going like where we don't so like we just walked with like such a determination. Let's go, just go. All right, there's a train. Get in. The door goes. Yeah, yeah. This is happening. This is actually
That's like I
happening.
said, like that's pretty brave for like ballsy for a sixth grader, I think.
Yeah, and but we weren't like crazy or anything like that. We were like always, we were pretty much on the straight. We were band monitors. We were on the straight. We didn't. One of my friends, he would like get into fights all the time, but he was like a good kid who would just always have fights because he was like angry.
Yeah.
But well, like for the most part, like we were in the middle. We were the guys that got along with everybody. Like,
Yeah.
we got along with the kids that got in trouble all the time. We got along with the kids who were just really weird, like we just everybody a little bit in the middle. But, we just said we have to do this. We have to just take off for the day and, plan this crazy day. So we did.
That's right.
So Broogie joined us, and then we are totally off topic now.
Yeah, what I'm talking about has
So-
nothing to do with that. So if the topic, I'm talking about a day I took off school, and the topic was
I mean,
what
are you
makes a teacher
wait, guys,
unpopular with colleagues? Well, Rob,
guys,
we
guys,
were really
are
on
you
track before she got here, right?
are you
Yeah.
surprised? Are you surprised?
No, but now it's your responsibility to get us back on track. What is one of the other many things that you've heard of that
Well,
people
I
are
have
still
to
mad at
say,
us for 10 years
I have a
later?
shortage. I blame myself for being off track, and I do blame Broogie for understanding that I have a short attention span
Hmm.
and not getting me off track from my
She took
stories here.
advantage of
Because
that.
no, but you know what? I'm telling my story. She doesn't say what does that have to do with
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
our topic. She
She keeps
says
going.
you have balls on you for doing that. So
Yeah.
it makes me tell the story for 5 more minutes.
Oh,
I
she's
mean, I
basically
don't think that's a bad thing.
she's
It's a
basically
good
like, tell
start.
me more.
Tell me more away from what we were talking
We
about.
don't have
All
an
right.
agenda.
All right, shut up. Listen, I still see
Yes.
flies in my room. There are still flies that fly around the fucking school, and it absolutely has to do with you guys doing that like larva fly crap
Oh, is
in the
that what caused it?
science
We were
lab.
before you got here. We were for 10 minutes. We were trying to figure out was it a protein shake? What the fuck? How did we?
No. Oh no. There were
Oh,
two different type of flies. There were the little gnats that had to
Yeah.
do with the
yeah,
stink,
yeah.
and then there were the
That,
larva flies, which
Oh
are the
yeah.
big black
yeah.
flies that are still in the school. And it was
That was that
disgusting.
But they're not in the science lab.
no.
So fucking gross.
Wait, I forgot the funniest part of this whole thing. And okay,
They bite. No.
there's a there's a teacher. So if we have a story about a teacher and we know that that teacher wouldn't mind us telling the story, we use the name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Right. I'm positive that this teacher is totally fine with this because it's directly related to the flies. So one
Right.
teacher that was directly impacted by the large black fly epidemic was
Fiasco.
Fiasco was Slagle, right?
Okay,
And so I remember once. Now I was in there talking to her. Slagle. One thing about Slagle is she used to, on the way to school, she would get like, I don't remember, I think it was tea or coffee, but it was very sweet. She put a lot of sugar in there, right? Which I love too. So there was a time when I was talking to her and she's like taking a sip from her cup with the lid on, right? And like something comes out of the little hole and into her mouth and it's a black fly. So like the black fly was drawn to the sweetness of her drink and like that was the apex of like, of someone
No,
probably wanting to kill us for
I haven't. No, Slagle went even.
That is
I
so
pissed off,
disgusting.
or we pissed off Slagle even more one time. Since we used her name already, we can always double check she's fine with it. A kid came in because we got them so into bugs. You know what I mean? Like with crickets and everything. A kid picked up cockroaches from their house and
Oh my
by
God.
their
Oh my God.
fingers. And then put him in their backpack loose.
Oh my
And then
God.
was so
my God.
excited, a first grader came to school with all the bugs in there, right?
Oh man.
And then came to me and went to Slagle and be like, "This is for science," and opened it up right in front of her. He said, "You know what happened to me this morning?" She came up to me and explained it to me. I was like,
Oh man.
"Sorry." I'm like, "Oh, that's gross." Yeah,
We love Slagle,
I don't
by
want.
the way.
I don't want. Oh yeah, no. She
Oh my God. That's so disgusting.
No, I made
just-
I made it up. She
like a sister to me.
Slagle put something onto Donors Choose, and I funded it for her. So we should be square. Maybe not after hearing that story, we're probably not square yet. We
No,
probably
definitely
No,
not.
Slagle and I, she's my sister, so we developed into having a very close relationship. So I'm sure she's cool with it, anything a little for busting on her.
I love it. That's like the showstopper right there. The cockroach story.
I think that might be
Yeah.
the end of, if we're talking about what makes a teacher unpopular with colleagues. I think showing up
Yeah.
with a bag full of cockroaches might be the
Yeah,
top.
100%.
Okay.
All
should we-
right.
Yeah, we'll
Good,
cut
Rob.
this one here, and yeah, Matt,
Yeah.
why don't you walk us out of here?
Well, that's what I was gonna do until you said we're gonna cut this one. I think they know that.
Matt, why don't you
That's-
take us out of the?
Why don't you end the show now by say, yeah, we'll work on the smoothness.
Why don't you do that
when
thing
we
you
should-
do?
All right.
Did you just say you'll work on the smoothness?
Work in progress.
We're a work in progress.
Anyway, yeah, since Rob and I have discussed that we officially don't have an outro, even though that we did. So thanks for tuning in to Playing Teacher with Matt and Rob and Janine Broody, and we will.
Oh,
And we'll.
it's very formal.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.